So good evening, everybody. This is August 25th. It's Karuna Cayton teaching mind training, the wheel of sharp weapons. And just to tell you a little bit about Karuna, he's been a student of Buddhist psychology for over 45 years and a longtime student of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. And he worked for various lamas at the Kopan Monastery from 75 to 88 and has created and taught secular studies programs for Tibetan and Nepalese monks. And he's assisted in the running of Buddhist programs for visitors, co-founder and director of the City Center in Kathmandu, Himalayan Yogic Institute. And he's been on the board of directors for FPMT since 1988. Oh my gosh. And then after returning to the States, he received an MA in psychology from JFK University in 92 and has worked at the Children's Health Council at Stanford and trained interns in narrative therapy at the Mental Research Institute in Palo Alto. And presently, Karuna has his own, the Karuna Group, which some of you may be familiar with, and coaches various businesses, couples, and individuals. And I don't know, I think Karuna is the man who needs no introduction personally. But there you have it.
Yeah. The introduction makes me look much better than I really am. So the thing is, the misleading mind too.
Ah, yes. Yeah. And a new book coming out soon, right?
If I get it done. There's a saying that says almost no one can write a book and no one can write a second one. So I mean that phase.
Yes, my wife's a writer and that's what she says.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so yeah, anything else? I have 3 kids. Did you tell them that?
Yes. Okay. No, I didn't tell them that.
That's more
I
important.
didn't know. I didn't think you'd want anybody to know that part.
No, that's more important.
And they're all Dharma practitioners as well, correct?
Yeah, but yeah.
So it runs in the family.
Runs in the family. Well, we beat it into them, right? Okay. So we good? Good to go? Were you gonna put something up for as far as getting started, Michael, in terms of prayers or?
Yep. Are you ready? Yeah, let's go with some prayers. Absolutely. Just
then I'll do my intro as well. Yeah, after that.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe just one thing. So a lot of classes I teach, I don't. Someone's asking where the link is. A lot of classes I teach, I don't do prayers. I do prayers. You know, it's really kind of individual. I try to feel out for what kind of class it is. This is a somewhat traditional class in the sense that we're taking somewhat an intermediate topic. And we're doing it with a Buddhist center, Land and Medicine Buddha. So I'm feeling like maybe it'd be sort of auspicious to start with some just preliminary prayers. Although I think, Michael, we'll just do them in English, and I'll give it at this first class. Okay, so if people are not familiar with this stuff, don't worry. You know, don't worry about, if this is not your thing, don't worry about that. Okay. But for those of us who traditionally engage in Buddhist teachings and stuff, it's kind of a protocol that you would offer some positive thought. Now, if you're not comfortable or not familiar with these ideas, don't worry. But like I said, is somewhat of an intermediate topic that we're engaged in tonight and for the next 4 nights. So when we started teaching, this refuge and bodhicitta before the teaching, you can just, if it doesn't make sense to you, then just okay, just generate a positive thought of your own. That's the main thing, because motivation, intention is one of the 5 omnipresent mental factors, so it's always there. So the difference here is we make it a contrived or a conscious intention. Okay, so about going for refuge, refuge means that really what we're doing when it says I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly, supreme assembly. So what that means is usually we go for refuge. I mean, normal people, ordinary, we go to refuge to our career, to our family, to medical professionals, to scientists. That's really, if you really check into your motive, when you're feeling really desperate or afraid, where do you put your refuge? Okay, this is really, really important. So here, and also for spiritual practitioners, this is specifically the idea. Now, Buddha doesn't mean necessarily the Shakyamuni Buddha or any sort of religious idea. Buddha means the omniscient mind that all of us have the potential to achieve. The Dharma is the set of, not just the set of ideas, teachings, and the mental state. Actually, Dharma really means the mental state that takes us to enlightenment. The Supreme Assembly, all those beings who help us. Okay, so that makes sense that we rely on those things. If we were sick and going to a doctor, going to the hospital, we rely on the doctor. We would rely on the medicine and the methods, and we rely on the nurses and other practitioners to support that. Okay. Then by the merits I create through listening to the Dharma. So every instant of our existence, every instant, even when we're asleep, we're creating mental imprints. Okay. So there's positive imprints, there's negative imprints, and there's neutral imprints. Hopefully we'll get to that a little bit tonight. By the merits I create through listening to these teachings, which shared time together, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So yes, we're seeking liberation. And if that's not familiar to you, we'll talk about that a little bit too. But, again, this text and this class we're dealing with is, it assumes that you have that awareness. And so this is a Mahayana teaching, and then what distinguishes the Mahayana or the great vehicle from the other vehicles, outside Buddhism and inside Buddhism, is this attitude that we do what we do for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, when we're thinking about a spiritual practice, and if we're honest, maybe before you got engaged, but it was probably to feel good, and I was involved in a spiritual practice before I became Buddhist, in the Hindu practice, and it was sort of an extension of my psychedelic days. I quit taking drugs, but I was using meditation in that context to kind of feel better, to get high, to have, exalted experiences and that kind of thing. So that's not this line here. So I wasn't doing it to benefit sentient beings. I was doing it to benefit me. Okay. So then just think like that for a moment. If anything I said resonated for you, we'll just repeat this 3 times, or I'll repeat it 3 times. And if you're unmuted, you can repeat it with me. So we say, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening or through teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening or teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So then this hour and a half, or whatever time we spend together, is clothed or cloaked in that motivation, okay? Now, this mandala offering, I think, again, this is a traditional protocol before a teaching, before many ceremonies. And essentially, what I'd like you to do, if it's not familiar to you, is just to visualize everything in your domain that's positive, your house, your family, your pets, your possessions, and then just multiply that and anything wholesome you can think of, good food, beautiful places, holidays, all that. So instead of just having the momentary enjoyment of that, what we do is we offer it. And this is just symbolic language here. There's that. And we offer it for those who are familiar, then you're offering it to your teacher, you're offering it to the whole assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Okay? Whatever connection you have with whatever deities you practice, whatever teacher you study with, and you're offering it all to them. This creates an immense amount of merit or good karma. Okay? Excuse me. Then if you know the mudra for this, you can go ahead and do it. So I'm going to just do it in English, and I think I'll do it in Okay, this ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryattayami. Okay, that last mantra is just offering it. Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, we got the niceties out of the way. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for coming this evening, and thank you for giving me the luxury of talking to you. Michael gave a nice introduction for me. Thank you, Michael. And it doesn't mean that I have any special qualities. Of course, people who know me know that I don't. But what I do, there's a few small things that I think would separate me from some people is, of course, that long history with the Dharma, with the Buddhist practice, Tibetan Buddhist teaching and culture. Is very, I feel like one of the most fortunate people on the planet due to my having made a strong connection with Lama Thupten Yeshe, who is the founder of the organization of which Land of Medicine Buddha is part of, the FPMT. And not only that, but he was not only an extraordinary visionary, he was an extraordinary being. And of course, his protege, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who still is at the helm of the organization and our root guru, root teacher. There's so many things I'd like to talk to you about. So I think as people who know me know that I do like some interaction. So let's find a way to do that so that we both cover interaction, your questions, your thoughts, your struggles, as well as getting the content out there, okay? So let's see if we can find a nice balance to that if that's interesting to you. Maybe people are here just to get as much information as they can. That's also okay. Okay. So is there anything in the introduction part that you need to clarify or say? Michael's got the mic, right?
No, just that once again, for those that showed up a little bit late, that we encourage people to turn their cameras on. It just makes for better engagement.
Yeah,
for sure. And just for you, Karuna, I have the text up whenever you want me to screen share any of it. Let me know.
Okay. Thanks. Are there any questions up that came on your text in the chat or anything? No, doesn't look like it.
Not yet.
Okay. So yeah, please don't feel hassled or stressed by the camera thing. What happens is that, we've become so familiar with Zoom, all of us, and taking classes that when it's strange for me because I'm unfortunately or fortunately trained as sort of a traditionalist. And so when we go to teachings, traditionally, when we go to teachings, I was quite surprised when I moved back to the West. And after living in Nepal, and then later on, not in the early days, but somehow later, people were quite casual in teachings that I didn't see demonstrated in traditional settings, eating dinner, laying down, pointing their feet towards the teacher, this kind of stuff. So we have these protocols, and the reason the protocols exist is for it's not for the teacher. It shouldn't be. I'm sure there's some teachers that they like it. No, I think it's more for us as students, this is not it's becoming that way, but it's really not meant to be a kind of a workshop, kind of, I don't know, information gathering. This is different what we're doing. What we're doing is something very, very, very profound. And I think that if we bring the attitude that this is the most profound thing that we can be engaged in our whole life. I mean, more profound than, I can't think of anything more profound than this. But we're all at different stages. So some people may not agree. Some people might be here for the information. So that's fine. No problem. Okay. But I'm also going to share with you, not just to kind of deliver to the lowest denominator, let's raise our bar a little bit. And if you'll indulge me, I'll let you know some of this stuff, like it's good to have the camera on so that we're making a connection with each other. And also, it's a selfish thing on my part because I've taught a lot of these classes where there's many people but 2 people have their camera on, and I feel It's harder for me because I feed off of your energy, too. I really do. I like the connection. I think I'm a people person anyway. So it happens quite frequently, and I can do that. But since we're in the room together, if you're able to, if you're able to, then I appreciate the camera on. If you're not able to, not comfortable, don't worry. That's perfectly fine. Okay. Okay. So the this text was when originally I was agreed to or asked to do a teaching on mind training, which is a very, very profound topic and very current. It's a very current topic. Okay, I think the original idea was to teach the text, The Wheel of Sharp Weapons, and then I spent a lot of time reviewing commentaries on stuff. Then I noticed the other day, I think it was only yesterday, that the class said mind training. So guess what? I didn't prepare for that. No, I'm joking. Yeah. So, and I appreciate that because the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, I think we'll use it as sort of a platform. I will definitely speak to it. But when we talk about overall, it's impossible to talk about the Wheel of Sharp Weapons without having some appreciation for the topic of mind training. So I want to probably tonight we're going to deal with the topic of mind training, and then we'll continue into diving into some areas of the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. I noticed one of my teachers, Geshe Jampagatso, taught this text. Many lamas have taught this. Many people have taught it. Alex Berzin, if you go to his site, he has a commentary on it that he taught over many weeks. And same with Geshe Jampagatso, I'm guessing he taught it. I don't really know. I should look again, but I'm sure it was probably, his commentary is 150 pages. Probably 4 or 5 pages per teaching, something like that. So he probably taught it over 10, 15 classes, I'm guessing. So we can do it that way. And so if we have 3 or 4 classes, we'll get enough out of it, but we won't be able to kind of go through it word by word like would be a normal commentary to the text. I don't know, who knows, maybe we will. But that's my plan, is to do a mind training. And also my plan is also, let's make this practical for everybody too. Okay. One of the beauties of the mind training texts, the mind training practice, is that it's meant to be practical. You don't have to learn all these lists. You don't have to learn all these analytical fabrications. You don't have to learn all different visualizations. You don't, so it's very down to earth. It's a very down to earth practice. Let me look at my notes. So since this is a Mahayana practice, now that's also important. So this is a Mahayana, and we know we have the Hinayana. The Hinayanas don't call themselves Hinayanas, so I apologize. It's usually they just say Theravadan or the fundamentalist path. But just for the sake of clarity, we have 2 Buddhist vehicles, Hinayana and the Mahayana. And there are differences in these two. The Hinayana path typically is described as a path that does lead to nirvana. It does lead to liberation. It does lead to beyond suffering. It does. But in the Mahayana approach, the goal for the Mahayanas is the attainment of enlightenment. So liberation's kind of part of enlightenment. It's sort of a subcategory of enlightenment. So there are many different debates about what happens for the Hinayana practitioner when he or she attains liberation. So these are interesting talks. These are philosophical debates. Generally speaking, from the Mahayana point of view, that person who attains liberation in the Hinayana path is, which is referred to as an arhat or a pratyeka Buddha. They're two different practitioners or people who attain this. From the Mahayana point of view, what they say is the arhat will stay Shravaka and pratyeka Buddha. But what they say is that the arhat, or the liberated one, whose name is a foe as an enemy, foe destroyer. Because he or she has destroyed the foe of cyclic existence, which is ignorance. So, but from the Mahayana point of view, let's say that the Arhat will stay in this nirvana, state of nirvana, for bazillions, gazillions, trillions, quintillion years, eons. But at some point, they have to leave that and attain enlightenment. So that's a really interesting. Again, this class not designed like we're going to talk about that, and there's a lot of debate and discussion about what that looks like, and of course, from the Hinayana point of view, they don't agree with that. You know, theirs is the final destination. But when we study, so our job is to study, you know, texts and study the philosophy, study the psychology, and when you hash it out, and then it gets to the point where liberation cannot be the final goal. That's kind of what happens. Just from the point of view, sure, of course, the practitioners who attain enlightenment tell us that, but for us, we have to, you know, look more at the analytics of it, right? And study it and see, well, is that even possible that liberation could be the final point? So in this sense, we are this practice, mind training. So when we say mind training, really everything in Buddhism, Hinayana, Theravada, Mahayana, you know, is to train the mind, isn't it? You know, so why are we calling this mind training? Lo Jong is described as mind. Well, it's a particular kind of approach. When this practice, so this practice, for interesting reasons, I don't really know why. I mean, I know how. This particular Lojong mind training practice was developed in Tibet. It wasn't necessarily started in Tibet because there are scriptural references and citations from the early Indian masters, as well as from Buddha's own teachings as well, where they have many quotes quoting that are sort of mind training quotes. Okay. But it was developed in Tibet, and as far as I know, and everyone, maybe someone can correct me, one of the other Mahayana countries like Japan and China and Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Mongolia, like that. I have never, and I mean, I've looked, so it's not just, I've never heard any reference to these mind training teachings in those cultures, unless they were imported from Tibet. Like in Mongolia, they have, because their teachings came from Tibet. Has anyone had that? Does anybody know? I guess you can't say, because I haven't said what mind training texts they are. what mind training is. So, but I think some of you know, those who have background in study. So anyway, if you find that, let me know. As we go into the class more, then maybe it becomes clear. Since it's a Mahayana teaching, okay, then what that means is it's highly focused on the development of bodhicitta and highly focused on developing the bodhisattva path, because that's what defines Mahayana, right? The Mahayana, as we know, what separates it or what distinguishes it from the Hinayana, as I said before, the Hinayana, the idea is to attain liberation, and this has to do with the personality. It's not like a fault, but the personality of the person who is focused on liberation. Somehow in the personality, there's some mechanisms that are operating that don't get him or her to focus on others. It's not that they don't have compassion. One of my teachers, Lama Linda, since passed away. So he told me, he said, and I don't know if I was being critical, I hope I was, but he said, don't criticize the Arhat. He said, he told me, we're looking out over Kathmandu Valley, and he said, if you dug a hole, I think he said 6 miles long, 6 miles wide, and 6 miles deep, and you got fingernails from all the disciples, he mentioned this one Arhat, I can't remember who it was. All the disciples attained liberation from that Arhat. That 6 mile hole wouldn't be big enough. In other words, yes, they do have compassion. So never ever should people think that it's some sort of non-compassionate, but bodhicitta, as we talk about it, is something very, very profound. Usually it's described as the mind, the mind that wants to attain awakening in order to liberate and benefit all sentient beings. I mean, that's just the rough, because that's the bodhicitta. I will talk about, as we go on through the class, that it's actually kind of more than that. Because you and I can say, oh, I'm going to meditate this morning, or I'm going to go to this class tonight for the benefit, for me to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, right? We can say that. We probably did say that. That's not necessarily bodhicitta. That's the disappointing part. That's kind of a wishing bodhicitta. There's a state of mind that there's a state of mind that just like there's a state of mind of depression, right? It's a state of mind. Or just like there's a state of mind of ambition, for your career, right? And if you're sort of possessed by your ambition for your career, no one has to tell you to get up in the morning and go to work, right? No one has to tell you to stay up and work on that project. You have this ambition, right? So no one, and in fact, you remember, as our parents would try and tell us to be a certain way, it didn't really work that well, did it? It's because, because we didn't have that mindset. And then maybe we developed the mindset, or we had the mindset, then we were in harmony or in, with our parents. But if I said everyone should, we can all agree to say, oh, we should all be compassionate, right? No one's going to really probably disagree with that. But why aren't we? Okay, why aren't we? I mean, people are to some degree, but fully compassionate. Why aren't we? It's because we're something else. Okay, so that's something else is the problem. Okay, that's something else is what we're trying to overcome. That's something else, no matter how good it is. I mean, of course, on a high level, I mean the ordinary, how good it is, it's still in the nature of suffering. It's still in the nature of confusion. It's still in the nature of ignorance and confusion. So when we talk about bodhicitta, so you and I don't need any prompts or any urging or any teaching to go get a glass of water if you're thirsty. We don't need any teaching, urging, support to go to sleep when we want to go to sleep. We just go do it. Okay. I'm not saying we don't need helpers. That's not the point. I'm talking about, mentally, you don't have to go, oh, okay, now I'm going to generate the thought of thirst. And then I'm going to motivate to go get a glass of water. And then I'm going to go get it and put some ice in it because I like it cold. You don't have to do that, right? We just do it. So right after this talk or before this talk, you went and you got in your car and you went to the market, maybe, or somewhere else. You didn't have to go through some sort of practice to do that, did you? You know what I mean? It was natural. It's just a natural state. And those actions we do are all of them. There's degrees. They're all of them for this sense of self. I need a drink. I need to go to the market real quick before this class. I need to get to work early. I need to drive to work. I need to take my medicine. I need a nap. Okay. Now, bodhicitta. So it's all me, me, me. Okay, some of the me's are not so bad, right? I mean, I'm not, it's not like it's all bad. That's not the point. We're talking philosophically here. Philosophically, we're going to talk more about the sense of self, sense of I, but that runs the show, doesn't it? You don't need it. It's default mode to go and do each and every instant for me. Sorry. Even when you say I'm doing it for my child or I'm doing it for my mother who's sick, that is a level of compassion, definitely. There's degrees, when I want to go rob a bank, that's a really high degree of self motivation, right? But if I want to help my mother who's not doing well, that's not a high level of self focus. But the self focus is still there. If we analyze and we meditate, we'll see that there is some level of discomfort I will experience if I don't go help my mom. Maybe it's guilt, right? Or maybe it's just my sense of values. But if you don't do it, there might be a sense of disharmony inside of me, right? Okay, so I'm just trying to point out this sense of I, self, is everywhere. Now, the exciting news is this bodhicitta, we really want to get it. And we have to be convinced of it in order to go forward with the idea of Lojong and mind training. I'm not sure how convinced we are of bodhicitta. So the bodhicitta mind is, even though we say, oh, it's the mind that wants to attain, it's the wish to attain, and the mind, there's the wish and there's the actual mind. So the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, that's where we're at right now. That's good. Okay, that's huge. But that's not bodhicitta. The bodhicitta mind it's a psychological state. It's not a wish. It's not a feel-good idea. It's described in those terms. Like when you fall in love or you're in love, and someone asks you, well, didn't ever have love? And you say, what's love? You can't describe it to them, can you? We can't even describe what cheesecake tastes like, can you? I mean, someone who hasn't tasted anything sweet or whatever. I mean, what does cheesecake taste like? You can only use words as concepts, but the experience itself, you can't give them the experience. It's not the same, is it? So this idea of bodhicitta, I really, 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 really want to stress for people try to commit to it, because it does sound like sort of self-sacrifice. It's not that. It's a mental state. Let me tell you what, technically, the mind, psychologically, the mind, we talk about a human being as possessing mind and body, and the mind there's many descriptions of many ways, schematics you can define the mind. But generally speaking, what we use is the mind is what we call is there's the primary mind, and there's a secondary mental factors. So primary mind, of which there's six divisions or six areas, six functions. There's the primary mind of the eye, of the sight. There's primary mind of the hearing. There's primary mind of the taste. There's primary mind of the tactile. There's primary mind of the smell, and there's primary mind of the mental. So when you're dreaming at night or daydreaming or like that, that's the mental consciousness functioning. Some schools, some lower schools, philosophical schools say that that's the thing that transmigrates from life to life, is the mental consciousness. Okay. Prasanghikas have a little different take on it, but it's okay. So this mental consciousness, when we die, all these other consciousness absorb, and the mental consciousness also absorbs, but it's the last, it's the very subtle one. Okay, it becomes very subtle. So that mental consciousness, those six consciousnesses, and then the secondary consciousnesses are things like, affection and warmth and jealousy and anger and hatred and discomfort. All those are the secondary mental factors. Like sometimes they say those are the emotions. Emotions is not the right word, because in the West we mean one thing by emotions, but emotions would be included in those secondary mental factors. And so when we talk about bodhicitta, one of the secondary mental factors, of which there's 11 virtuous ones, is compassion. So sometimes I've read that actually bodhicitta is the union of the mental consciousness, which is a primary mind that just sees things without conception, accompanied by compassion. So when you're feeling in love, when you're feeling love, when you're feeling compassion, if you really were really feeling this, you feel really good, right? You feel, I mean, even in your meditation, you might sink into a state of bliss, right? Some level of bliss. And the only way you can describe it, people say, what? You say, oh, I just felt just this universal love, right? Or this universal peace, or this all-pervasive peace, all-pervasive compassion. Okay? So we do have these things. They're just not very functional, not very functioning. And so when the bodhicitta mind begins to be cultivated and developed, this mind, this primary mind, which is total clarity, right? It's total clarity because it doesn't have those messy mental factors, of which there's good ones too. This bodhicitta mind is accompanied by compassion. So that mind does not need to ever contrive to work towards enlightenment for all living beings, any more than you and I need to contrive to go to the kitchen and make dinner for me or for the family. It doesn't need any contriving either. So the bodhisattva, of which we all will become if we're not already, maybe you all are, I'm just talking to myself. So is the bodhisattva has that mind, and this is really important. So the bodhisattva has that mental consciousness, which is not activated in us ordinary people. Okay? It's just not activated. So this mind training Lojong text, its practices are to activate it. Then activating it also is to enhance it, cultivate it, increase it. And then what happens, so the mind training practices do two things. One is they enhance this bodhicitta mind. Okay. And the second thing they do is they help eliminate all the messes in our mind that get in the way of the awakening. See, bodhi means awaken. So really, I like the term awakening mind. It's beautiful. The quality of the awakening mind in the Maya, and this is in the Mahayana context only, by the way, not in the Theravada, not in the Hindu tradition, as far as I know. I mean, we don't know because it could be, but as far as we know, we don't know it's there. Sometimes I think that when they describe the Christ mind, it sounds to me like very similar to bodhicitta, but it could be that it's a mind of compassion or love. I don't really know. Certainly Jesus seemed to be a bodhisattva, if not a Buddha, you know. Unfortunately, probably it was in there and they got lost. Maybe it's in those mystics, Christian mystics who have access to those teachings. Very likely could be. You know, we can't say. But anyway, from the Buddhist point of view, this is what we're trying to do. So it's not contrived. Bodhicitta is not contrived. When we meet, now I'm going to say I believe, how can I really know? But when I have met, you know, several beings that have generated, well, there's levels of generating bodhicitta, by the way, and we can talk about that. I didn't drink that from bodhicitta. I drank that from me, by the way, in case anyone's doubting. So when we're developing the bodhicitta mind, we go through phases. So this is also important because when I was in the Hindu tradition before, it was kind of like I'm not saying I understood the Hindu, I'm just saying for me, that what was happening was there was this idea of me and then moksha or liberation, but there didn't seem to be anything in between. So that's not the case in terms of the Buddhist approach to moksha or liberation or enlightenment. Okay. So when we talk about the Mahayana tradition, we're talking about going through 5 different stages to enlightenment. From the time you generate bodhicitta to the time you attain enlightenment, we will go through 5 stages. Some of us might be on the first or second or third, we don't know, right? But right. So when so that's, yeah. So when we are, so that means, so for Shakyamuni Buddha, it's said from the moment he generated bodhicitta, that is the demarcation of entering the path. Okay. So now generating bodhicitta can be a very profound, it is very profound experience. But bear in mind, it just means it's the beginning. Now, if you attain enlightenment in one lifetime after generating, in that lifetime generating bodhicitta, or countless, many lifetimes, that's a different story. Okay. So in Shakyamuni Buddha's case, it's said typically, and there's different interpretation, but in the typical explanation, it says that Shakyamuni Buddha went from the first time the life he generated bodhicitta in, to the life that he attained enlightenment in, which was under the Bodhi tree 2,600 or almost 2,600 years ago in Bodh Gaya, India. The length of time that took was 3 countless great eons. Okay. And if anyone wants to know how long countless great eon is, that's one of those typical Buddhist things that if it's a countless great eon, how can I say how long it is? Because countless. I think they use that as hyperbole, the word countless. There is a number to it, but it's pretty long. It's real. Well, I've looked it up and I can't remember anymore. One countless great eon is composed of 80 intermediate eons. One intermediate eon, I think, is about the birth, abiding, death, and void space of one sun, S-U-N, one sun, like our sun. So the birth, abiding, dissolution, and then there'll be a voidness. That's one intermediate eon. So 80 of those is one great eon, and he had 3 of those. It was a while, right? Then we take a case of Milarepa, the great Tibetan yogi who attained enlightenment in one lifetime. So we don't get too discouraged. Okay. Were there any questions, Michael? No. Anyone need a break? This halfway through? Like get something to drink or something? Yes, I got one saying yes. Okay. Okay, why don't we take just 5 minutes, okay? My speaker is occasionally. Oh. Okay, just 5 minutes, not more. And if you have questions, then put them up there for Michael and we'll be right back. Okay. Okay. So, okay, so as everyone can hear me okay, right? Yeah, okay. Now, this practice of mind training that we're talking about here in particular, that this class is involved in, this is not, when we're talking about mind training, and I'll get to the details a little bit later, but, you know, we're not talking about, this is a very particular kind of practice. As I said, it's found, seems to be only found in the Tibetan tradition. All four of the Tibetan traditions in Tibet practice this, and it's very prevalent and popular amongst the four traditions, Karya, Nyingma, Shakya, and Gelug, those four schools or traditions in Tibet. To engage in this practice of the mind training, since we're talking about it as a Mahayana practice, and again, I don't know where people are at in this class, so trying to speak for to everybody. There's an assumption that since it's a Mahayana practice, then and it's useful for any person, even if they're non-Buddhist, okay? But in traditional language or in traditional approach, the assumption is that a person who is engaging in the mind training practice has already convinced of the practice or the theories, how to say this, convinced of the philosophical ideas that constitute the two lower. So we're talking about three levels of capacity of Buddhist practitioner. Okay, we just say lower scope, middle scope, highest scope. You're probably familiar with these. So in the lower scope, just to review, there's an assumption that already that the student has meditated on and studied and accepts the concept of the beginningless mind, for example, but in particular, you know, practices and teachings such as perfect human rebirth, the 8 worldly dharmas or mundane concerns, impermanence and death, the suffering of the 3 lower realms, and refuge, okay, among others. But those are the practices of the lower scope, because in the lower scope, the mind is focused, or the practitioner, of attaining a better rebirth. Okay, so you know, it's not focused on attaining immediately liberation or enlightenment. The situation is such that he or she is concerned about their future rebirth. They have a strong sense that there are lower realms. There's a strong sense that there's no control over being reborn in the lower realms. There's a sense that the person could be reborn there, since they have no real developed any particular practice that can prevent them from the lower realms. The lower realms are a very real and tangible experience for this person, as it should be for us. And the idea, you see, already they have the idea of rebirth. I think when we're talking about these teachings in the Western context, you know, it's almost like we have to spend a lot of time talking about rebirth, don't we? Convincing people, becoming convinced about rebirth. But in the typical Asian community and Tibetan community in particular, there was not that question. They didn't have to be convinced. That was just a given. They grew up with that concept. But it's possible that the person felt, well, I can't practice in this life. I know I have to work, I have family, I gotta, whatever, you know, I don't have a chance, so I can't study. I have to, whatever, survive, provide for my family. So their religious practice, their spiritual practice will be dedicated towards attaining a rebirth where they can practice next lifetime. Okay, or a rebirth where they have great ease and luxury, whatever you want to say. It could be in a God realm or in a human realm, but that's their motivation. So we've already tackled that, so to speak. That's the idea, that we've tackled that, we've come to terms with that, we've read so that my mind is not thinking when I engage in spiritual practice, when I engage in study, when I go to teachings, when I meditate, when I circumambulate, when I give food to a dog, when I give money offering, my intention is not so that I and just get a better rebirth. Okay. That would be the lowest scope of motivation. The middle scope of motivation, which is captures from the approach of the Hinayana practitioner, the Theravada practitioner, is that practitioner is focused on liberation. So what that practitioner or that student is going to focus on are karma. So getting familiar with the law of cause and effect. They're going to become familiar with the Four Noble Truths, and they're going to spend a lot of their meditation on dependent arising, the 12 links. Okay, and that's sort of the backbone of their practice. And so as a result of that, meditating a lot on the suffering of some sort of the Four Noble Truths, of course, the first one being the truth of suffering, they get a very strong feeling for the truth of suffering, for the truth of the cause of suffering, for the truth of the release from suffering, and the truth of the path. And this is a lot of what their meditation practice is engaged in. And so they train the mind. The mind training at that point is not the mind training we're talking about. That would be maybe more like the mind training the mind to be concentrated, to have it develop calm abiding, okay, and penetrative insight, okay. So that the reason they develop that is develop a mind that turns away from samsara or suffering of the world. And that mind that turns away is directed being liberated from all that. So that would be the being of middle scope. So we have to have a sense of appreciation for those two lower scopes in order to engage in this text, or this practice, I should say, in the context of our spiritual practice. Now His Holiness Dalai Lama taught one of the most popular mind training texts called the 8 Verses of Thought Transformation, and he taught it in Central Park, and he taught it, I think, well over 100,000 people. So I don't think, I'm making an assumption, but I think it's fair to say of the 100,000 people, I'm not sure many of them had already wrestled with the 2 lower scopes, and now we're engaged in the higher scope and of the Mahayana path, and interested in developing bodhicitta and becoming a bodhisattva. I think I'm just making an assumption, but I'm going to assume of the 100,000 people, I guess most were not like that, but they got great value from the text as well. So here in what we're doing, I'm teaching it in the little more in the traditional sense, right? Rather than just as a psychological technique for improving our life, which it can do. We can use it for that, but that's not the context that I'm teaching. And I don't think that's why you came, right? Can I make that assumption? Michael, can I make that assumption? Okay, good. Of course, if people are new to this, then you're welcome to also get clarification from me. Don't feel shy. I will try not to embarrass you. Okay, I won't laugh. Okay. We're all beginners anyway, so it's not much difference.
Karuna, we did have one question in the chat.
Oh, good.
Did you want to take it?
Yep.
Or wait till later?
No.
So somebody has asked, they just need a little more focused idea of how Lojong is, quote, different approach, and how specifically is it different, and from what?
Okay. That's
Does that
further
make
down
sense?
on these pages. Yeah, I think the person's just trying to be polite and tell me to hurry up. Right. Okay. So more specifically, this Lojong practice, these texts are a Mahayana text. It's a Mahayana practice to develop bodhicitta. Okay, there are other practices that also help to develop bodhicitta, but this is one of the most powerful, common practice for the bodhisattva practice in the Tibetan tradition. Within the in the bodhisattva practice, in the in the development of the bodhisattva being the person who's generating bodhicitta and practicing bodhicitta, you've probably heard that the bodhisattva path, according to the sutra path, is to develop the 6 perfections, 6 paramitas. This is my own interpretation right now. So the 6 paramitas are developing the practice of exalted generosity, exalted patience, exalted ethics or discipline, exalted joyous engagement or vigor, exalted concentration, exalted wisdom. Okay, so I just want to put this out. We don't have to go into this, but I do want to state this so it kind of gets situated in your mind. When you listen to these teachings and when you go through your practice, it's my contention, and it's not just mine, but it's my contention that we cannot develop generosity according to the paramita as a bodhisattva, what the bodhisattva wants to develop. We cannot develop patience, ethics, joyous effort, concentration, wisdom without problems. Simple as that. In other words, problems, well, we can't develop anything without problems. Problems are always going to be there. But in terms of what if we want to develop patience, I don't think we can develop patience without someone making us feel impatient. That's the view of the Lojong teachings. Yes, I mean, I'm not 100% correct, because in theory, you could develop patience in meditation, and you could develop ethics and meditate, you can practice, but it's not the bodhisattva level of patience for the bodhisattva, because the bodhisattva is in a hurry. The bodhisattva is in a hurry to enlighten, because the longer she or he is not enlightened, boom, people are disappearing in front of us, aren't they? Our loved ones die, right? People around us die. Animals or pets die. Where the heck do they go? This is now we're going to the lower scope point of view. For the most part, every being that dies is going to the lower realms. Just about every being. Scary. It's very, very scary. So the bodhisattva feels this strong urge. It's just intolerable for her to feel that she can't do anything. He can't do anything. Okay. So you could develop slowly patience, generosity, but we develop it quicker, and this speaks to what this Lojong practice is. When there's that guy on the street corner who you don't want to look at, maybe mumbling to himself, really dirty, a little sign that you probably don't believe anyway, that he's a vet and needs money for a bus ticket back to somewhere. I mean, we're skeptical. It could be true, right? But you see, what mind does that bring up in us? Well, I should speak for myself. Okay. So the mind brings up for me is, I'm not going to give him, he's just going to use it for drugs, right? That's not a generous mind. Okay. It doesn't matter if he's using it for drugs or not. What we're focused on here is my mind. So how can I practice generosity or patience, right? So to develop patience, you think we can develop it when no one's yelling at us, when no one's criticizing us, when no one's putting us down? It's fake, probably. Now, some people say, well, I can by developing a really calm mind. That would be a Theravada approach, right? Just developing, withdrawal from it. But for the Bodhisattva, he doesn't or she doesn't want to withdraw, they want to engage. It's faster, that's why. Now, so this has been, so the Lojong practice has been around in Tibet for about 1,000 years. The heart of Lojong is the cultivation and enhancement of Mahayana Buddhism's highest spiritual ideal, which is a generation of the awakening mind. For the person to ask the question, I'm going to, of course, four teachings we're going to talk about your question, but theoretically, in actuality, what it is that we use problems as the means to develop bodhicitta. And the problems we use primarily are psychological, emotional. Okay. And we're going to get into this, and again, I'll repeat it in a few minutes, but I want to answer the person's question because they might fire me otherwise. So the foundation of these teachings, and we're going to go into more and more, is that we need to attain liberation, enlightenment quickly because everyone's sinking around us, including the insects and the animals, right? I mean, how does a barnacle get a higher rebirth in practice? How does that happen? Difficult, right? So the idea is that they're getting once in the lower realms, very hard to get out. The cause of all suffering, if we accept the one nature of suffering, because we already went through the two lower scopes, so we accept suffering, the truth of suffering. The cause is twofold. The cause is a grasping at reality that isn't there. That's the cause. We grasp reality to be a certain way that it doesn't exist. Then, as a result of that grasping, like, I really like, that car, that Tesla, right? What happens then, the grasping sees the Tesla as true, as existing in a way that does not exist and never has. Then I want that Tesla. That's the self-cherishing. So we got self-grasping, we got self-cherishing. I need to have that Tesla. I want to have that Tesla. And I can't get that Tesla, and then I get jealous because people who do have that Tesla like that. So all of our problems in this set of teachings and this approach, all the problems are blamed on self-cherishing. Self-cherishing is the thought that puts you first, puts me first. Okay. That thought that puts me first is the cause of all future rebirths, all present and future problems. Because now, if we're not a lower scope, lower middle scope, if we appreciate it, because the idea of this practice is directly related with karma, cause and effect. Okay, so Lojong is taking all of these circumstances that arise for us. See, that's different than meditating on, or concentration, or see, it's based, and I'm going to get more and more, of course, into this. The person's question is really the 4 days, right? So the idea again is that self-cherishing is seen as the direct element that keeps us in samsara. I mean, technically speaking, we could say it's the self-grasping, it's the ignorance of reality, which actually, that's truly what it is. But the way we get to self-grasping is through self-cherishing, because it's always coming up. Okay? So what happens now is, for the spiritual practitioner, there was one great yogi, Kadampa yogi, Kadampa Geshe, whatever, 900 years ago, whatever it was. And just before he started to pass away, he knew he was dying, and so his disciples asked why he was dying. And he said, because I prayed and prayed and prayed to go to the hell realms to benefit sentient beings. And all I can see is I can be reborn in the pure realms. That's the bodhisattva ideal. Okay. One time, my teacher Lama Zopa, your teacher maybe too. So one time, it was many years ago, Lama in New Delhi, in Delhi at our center there, and he was about to travel overseas, and yet he was meeting with students and students, until they had to go to the airport. And then even when there's time to leave for the airport, Rinpoche's assistant went in and mentioned, Rinpoche, we got to go. And he says, no. And I think Rinpoche kind of ignored him. So this attendant knew well enough, so he sent the bags ahead of time. This was back in the days when you could check in and you didn't have to be there, and your bags and stuff. So he sent the bags, and then still Rinpoche wasn't coming out of the room, meeting with a very old Tibetan Lama monk. Finally, Rinpoche came running out to the taxi, they were taking a taxi, ran out to the taxi or to the car, and he didn't have any shoes on. And he didn't, in the monk's robes, underneath the robe is kind of a petticoat they wear. I don't know what you call it, underskirt. He came running out in that, but his outer robe he didn't have his outer robe on. And then up above, they wear the shawl, it's called a zen, didn't have a zen with him. So he's barefoot in his petticoat and his undershirt. His attendant said, Roger, I said, Rinpoche, where's your clothes? Where are they? Oh, that old monk, he didn't have any shoes. So I gave him my shoes. And then the person before that, remember that monk that came in, very poor from South India, he didn't have his outer robe was torn, so I gave him my robe. Right? And same thing with his Zen. You give him his clothes away. He didn't, what I mean? There's no thought. Right? There's no thought of that. So this is Lojong practice, okay? This is Lojong practice. I heard, even the advanced, this is true. The advanced practitioner. I know one great Lama who was getting dentistry done. I mean, I'm not talking about simple dentistry. They're doing what do they call it? Not implants, but all the 7 teeth they're putting. He did it all without painkillers. Can you imagine? I mean, hours of dentistry. So, but of course, the experience for that person changes too. So we shouldn't mistake the fact that that they're suffering the way we suffer. That they don't experience that. So the Lojong teachings, when we do this, 2 things happen. One is that we purify the karma that we've created for to experience these negative results. Not only that, but then for the real practitioner, it transforms into the path itself. So it enhances their bodhicitta. So they go from a lower level of bliss. Now they got a bliss, bliss. So their bliss, their well-being, their bliss, their state of mind increases. The quality of their mind increases. Okay, but this is dependent upon some other factors like the understanding emptiness. Okay, we'll talk about, don't worry. Okay, so this is a disciplined process for radically transforming our thoughts and prejudices from natural self-centeredness to other-centered altruism. Okay, it's a specific approach for developing bodhicitta. The meaning of mind training, lo means mind, okay, thought, attitude, okay. Jong has 3 or 4 meanings. One is a training and development or a skill. It's like development, training, a skill, or mastering a field of knowledge. So that's one thing with Jong. Then also the second one is habituation or familiarization with ways of being and thinking. So it's like, training yourself to be a different way and thinking a different way, okay, and habituating ourselves that way. Then it also means the third one is cultivating specific mental qualities. So you think about when you're going through a hard time and you decide like, okay, I'm going to use this to not only purify my karmic imprints, but it's going to make me a kinder person, okay, a more patient person, whatever it is. So that's also Jong. You know, you develop, so this is, you know, something that happens in this practice. It cultivates these positive qualities in us, like patience. So I went to the dentist today. I was in this chair for 2.5 hours. It was like ridiculous. Yeah, no, yes, I did have Novocaine. But I did try to take it on. And something very interesting happened, rather than, you know, cringing and I got to get out of here. And what I learned is very, really interesting. I don't know, probably you already have had this experience, but when I was in the sound of the drill and the smell, right? Remember the smell? People remember that? And then there's a taste because going into, and what I did is I just thought, okay, I got to teach this class tonight. Maybe I should try and practice this a little bit. So I did my best, and what I learned was amazing. My whole body relaxed, and everything got softer. But what was more interesting is I thought, and I got to ask those of you, I mean, I'm going to be a bit religious here, okay? a bit religious. But the drill sounded what it must be like to be in the hell realms, because the noise sounds like some screaming sentient being. They say in the hell realms, the screaming goes on for thousands of years. And I thought the smell, was kind of like, reminded me when in Nepal around the burning ghats, you know, where they burn the bodies. It's some reminded me of that, you know, really terrible smell, right? And the taste was kind of burning like that. I thought that must be like, you know, beings who can't find food, you know, like preta spirits and things like that. And then they finally when it turns to fire, you know. So it was helpful. I don't know, maybe I was just totally fantasizing. Okay, I get that. But for me, I thought, wow, you know, if there really are hell realms and you're hearing that screaming for thousands of years, I might, the noise for me was irritating until I relaxed, right? Right? But all of a sudden, when you think, oh, I got to purify this, I don't ever have to experience this again, maybe. And I don't have to experience it in the hell realms. That was a really good thought. That was really helpful. And then of course, you want to also use it that's going to help me generate, increase my bodhicitta so that I can be a benefit to others, right? So you put all that in there, but it's just a mental state, right? It's not, I mean, for me, just contrived, but for bodhisattva, it's all natural. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is in the Lojong practice, when we begin to deal with the problems that arise for us as a means for generating the path, a means to increase our love and compassion, our affection, our bodhicitta, then this is transformative. So we often in the Lojong teachings, it's spoken about how these teachings are transformative. Okay. Transformation means there's a training we're engaged in, right? We're training, we do it over and over again. We become habituated to it. So, you know, next time you go into the dentist chair, if you do that over and over again, it becomes a habit. It's like when we're not feeling well, we're in a habit of whatever, moaning and complaining, and, you know, that's just a habit, right? It doesn't mean we have to be that way. So we begin to change our habit. That's what transformation means. And then cultivating it. Then we cultivate it by being over and over, we become more and more like that. And by the way, for most of you know this, but when you practice these teachings, these ideas, they do work. They do work. But they don't work once. Yeah, Michael, and one last thing on that. And the other thing about transformation is it's cleansing, right? You feel cleansed. Maybe not right away, but I will promise you it is cumulative, and you do evolve. We do evolve. Or else why would we do this? It's not for the fame. I mean, this is not easy stuff. It's much easier to complain, it seems. Yeah, Michael. I probably didn't answer.
That is so fascinating. Your take on the dentist because I've always tried when if I've had same experience with dentists and other surgeries. And I always try to focus on how kind they are to
Oh,
try to
yeah.
help me. Do you think that I've never used your approach? Do you think that one is particularly more effective than the other, or are they both valid?
I
Low
think they're
jump.
both, I think they're definitely both valid because you remind me, and we haven't gotten there yet, but part of this transformation, this Lojong practice. And now there's many, just to speak to Michael's point. Okay. Not a small topic. Okay. These are just, and this is not a commentary. These are just Lojong texts that have been translated and put in here. No commentary. So many of the Lojong texts use the approach of the kindness of sentient beings. They all really do, and in some form or another. So that is in the practice of developing bodhicitta. There's many methods of developing bodhicitta that are presented in the Mahayana teachings, and so this one, if you look at like the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, for example. Just as an example, we're not just using that text, but we're sort of using that as the foundation. The kindness of sentient beings is not really the cornerstone of that practice. I would say the cornerstone of the Wheel of Sharp Weapons is karma. I would say it's karma, which means purification. It has all the others, but it's focused on that, which is pretty intense. And to use that as our text, again, the students here, including myself, we have to have at least some acceptance that there is karma, or willing, maybe I should put it differently, leaning towards belief is fine. It's okay to have doubt. We will have doubt. But the doubt should be one like, okay, I just need more convincing, but yeah, I'm pretty sure there's something to it. That's fine. That's fine. So the hallmark of this Lojong teachings is that from the ordinary self-centered state to the enlightened other-centeredness. That's the practice of Lojong. From the ordinary self-centered state to the enlightened other-centeredness. And I do want to go into, I might not do, excuse me. I'm sort of, it's very important that we discuss, more philosophically what the ordinary self-centeredness means. I will do that. We will do that, which means we go into teachings on emptiness, okay? Emptiness of inherent existence, particularly the emptiness of the inherent existence of a true self. And we will go into the enlightened other-centeredness. We have to. But to go into other enlightened other-centeredness, we have to understand what this self-centeredness means. It's a deep, profound topic, right? For people know. I mean, I don't. But we need to go into that. All the Buddhists, and we could say, all the Buddhist teachings are mind training. So if you're wondering this is a specific genre of mind training, and the specific approaches to developing the altruistic awakening mind. When we're meditating, mind training can be meditating on death and impermanence. It is mind training. But meditating on death and impermanence is not directly intended to develop the awakening mind. For sure can strengthen all those things, but not directly. The point of that is to actually the point of meditating on death and impermanence, besides enhancing our understanding of emptiness, I mean, more specifically, it's designed to help us be motivated to practice. It's not like a psychological trick. It's just a fact. People who have high level of awareness are aware of their death and impermanence. And so they don't, they make their life much more fruitful and much more worthwhile. But my point is that is mind training, but that's not Lojong mind training. This is a specific genre, especially this practice of mind training, especially is focused on equalizing yourself with others and exchanging self and others. However, this text in its approach, there are other texts that will spend a lot of time. Shanti Deva's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life is the hallmark text for equalizing, exchanging oneself with others. This text, of course, also because there's no Lojong text, probably, that you can't, that won't highlight exchanging ourself with others. Okay, going from self-centeredness to other-centeredness. Okay, but that's not a, that's not a practice that's done in developing Shina, calm abiding. That's not a practice developed in meditating on perfect human rebirth. That's not a practice developed in meditating karma or dependent arising or emptiness. You see? So it is a practice of Lojong. Okay. Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes,
Could-
please.
Um, so I'm rather new, but
Good. Me
my-
too.
I'm Maureen. My understanding though is when you say practice Lojong,
Yeah.
I'm interpreting that as all the slogans that make up, that are underneath like the 7 or the 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, is that what you mean by practicing? Is that like when, I see, I just happened today to look to see, oh, there's all these cards that have 59 of the slogans.
Yeah.
Is slogans what makes up the practice of Lojong? It might be a basic question, but
No, it's a great question. There's no basic question, so I thank you for asking.
Okay.
There's no basic questions. So, I can't say those 59 cards or whatever, they're all Lojong because I'd have to read them, right? So let's go back back a minute or two. So if a slogan is designed to first of all, what the Lojong teaching, the practice does, it exposes your self-cherishing mind. Okay, so that if those slogans are the kind of thing that are prompting that, then we could say they probably fall into the Lojong genre of teachings. So it's provocative. So Lojong, most of the teachings that I see, yes, they're slogans, I would call them verses or whatever they are provocative, right? And the reason they're provocative is they're meant to expose a reaction. And that reaction, we'll go into this more in the next 3 classes. That reaction, we want that. But now what we do is different. It's not just having the reaction, because that doesn't necessarily make it Lojong practice. What makes Lojong practice is when you have reaction, you have your secondary reaction is, it's exposing the self-cherishing mind. Then the third thing that happens is, well, great, instead of, oh crap. It's like great, because you know that that's the enemy. And I'm going to talk about that next week. This self-cherishing is the problem of both relatively, temporally, it's also what makes us not happy, by the way, and ultimately. So, we could say it's even a therapeutic approach, but I don't want to say that exactly, because people always throw that back at you and saying, you mean my husband's beating me up? And you say my enemy is my best friend, so I should just let him beat me up. That's kind of what happens with that. Yeah, that's not the point, right? So that's a simplistic way of understanding. The practice is to expose the self-cherishing mind, and then there takes some commitment to know that self-cherishing mind is the problem. Okay, that can take years and years and years. And by the way, it goes subtle. I think that someone like Lama Zobrimshe years ago, his Lojong practice probably was just around eating food. He had already taken care of people getting angry at him, or a thorn in his foot, or all these other, it probably was as subtle that the self-cherishing mind wanted to eat an apple. Then he worked with that, you know what I mean? So there's definitely degrees. So right now for us, it's like, my wife yelling at me that I didn't pick up my socks. Okay, I wanted to yell back at her that she didn't pick up the towel, and that That's where we're at. But what makes it Lojong is not just the slogan, oh, my wife's my best friend. It's really like, oh, I really don't want to be that person. You know, I don't want to be the person that the self-cherishing mind is making me be. Okay. Okay, I think is that it, Michael? Okay.
We're at time. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope, it's kind of weird. I'm sorry. The context is I talk a lot and you hopefully listen a lot. It's always kind of weird, but I think we need the information. I hope I didn't confuse people. Come next week with your thoughts. We will, in these classes, there is one very, very definitive meditation that many of you probably know, Tonglen meditation that I will introduce again. And we'll go, we use this text as our springboard, but yeah, I hope that was helpful. And again, let Michael know if there's something that would be more helpful or questions for next class, that kind of thing. Can you please email Michael and I'll try to attend to it. So now at the end, we try to do some dedication. Which prayers do we have here?
Yeah. Did you want me to pull them up? The prayers?
Sure. Okay. Okay, so not to talk too much because I already talked too much, but as I mentioned, in our psychology, in the mind itself, there are many mental factors, and there's what we call the 5 omnipresent mental factors, which mean they're always there, even when we're asleep, in a coma, going in the intermediate state, when we die, all those things. And one of them is always intention or motivation. So dedication is kind of like motivation. So what we do is if we dedicate this positive imprints we generated today, then they don't just like if we don't dedicate these positive imprints, they might just ripen as, a cool breeze on a hot day, or they might, I'm making this up, by the way, I don't know how they might, but my point is they just ripen as very temporal pleasure. But we have enough of those. So if you dedicate, then we say in this way, then they'll actually generate the mind that is engaged in the path itself. Okay, it aids the path itself. So due to these merits, so think strongly. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha. Guru Buddha means omniscient mind, your omniscient mind, okay? Not someone else's, not like you're going to become some guru, some Buddha guru thing. No, it's not like that. It's yours. It's in your Buddha potential, okay? No one else's. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. That way we don't come polluted, that these teachings, oh, I want to become famous, I want to have students, I want to, or maybe I get through this, I get a better house. No, it's only dedicated to this, so it won't be wasted. I think that's, and then there's one other prayer. Is that right, Michael? That's it? Okay, good. Oh, that's a different prayer. This is my favorite prayer. I always say things like that, so don't take it too seriously. But may the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, awakening mind, may the supreme jewel, awakening mind, that has not arisen within my mind stream, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen never diminish, but increase more and more until I attain full awakening. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. If you have also teachers that you have a strong connection with, then you can also dedicate your merits towards the accomplishment of their projects and their long life. They don't need prayers for long life. We need prayers that they manifest a long life. Okay, so like His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, whatever teachers you have, May they never manifest sickness, never manifest aging, never manifest death until they feel their work is done. Okay, thank you so much. I hope to see you next week. Maybe no one will show up next week. I don't know what I've said tonight. So thank you very, very